everyone. We have a game with the white pieces against normal Fa, rated 1343. We go into a Jobava London, or we try to. Let's see if he stops us from playing e4. He does. So we bring a piece out towards the center. He goes knight a6, preemptively defending the attack. This guy's on his A game. So we're just going to play e3, our normal move, connecting the pawns, opening the bishop. If we ever wanted to ruin the structure, we could just take the knight. It's a bit weird to put it here unprovoked. We didn't force him to do that. But he's so afraid of knight b5 that he knows not to go knight c6. Okay, so he plays his bishop out towards the center. Oh, maybe he's trying to use our ideas against us. You never know. In either case, black very often goes bishop b4, trying to create a nuisance. Since our knight usually goes to f3, he, it kind of wants to be on e2 if he's going to pin us. So you can kill two birds with one stone. Remove both of those ideas. It's a very useful prophylactic move that you make in these structures anyway. It severely limits his pieces and their options. It supports a future b4 much later on. But it's mostly just a prophylactic move. He goes c5, which attacks our center. Maybe threatens to even push past in some cases. And if we take, he takes with the knight, saying, hey, that's why I put the knight there. It's all part of my plan. That's something. We can still go knight b5 though. Now that he pushed his c-pawn, he can never go c6. And if we put our knight here, it's still quite annoying for him. It pressures the a-pawn, so he can't move his rook as easily. It coordinates on the d6 square. It ties his knight down to c7. It frees up the square so I can play c3 and solidify my pawn chain even better. Yep. See nothing wrong with it here. Of course, that wasn't the only move. You have options you could have developed. Okay, so he takes the pawn. Another thing with the knight is it could take backwards, which is a thing. But taking forwards with the pawn makes sense, establishing a pawn presence. Taking with the queen looks weird, but taking with the pawn looks correct. Now his knight really is bad. So he opens up his bishop, closes the pawn chain, but his bishop can't even develop anywhere. It has to go to e7. So this is looking worse and worse for him. Now c3 is a normal move, solidifying, stopping any pressure. Let's play it. It opens up our queen. And now we're ready to develop our king side. So he goes for the modest e7. Makes sense. Now we could pawn storm his pieces. And that might be annoying for him since he doesn't have a lot of space. If we just develop here, I guess it's possible. We could also go f3 and and hunt his stuff. So like f3, h5. Okay, let's bring the knight out. Let him castle first. Put his king on that side. And then we can hunt the bishop a different way. Instead of f3 g4, there's also the knight e5 g4, which is a different way to support it. So he castles, which is nice. We can now go for our plan. It does discoordinate the knight and bishop for a second though. So if I jump in here, how does he take advantage of that? He could then go here. Can he though? I get a knight, he gets a knight. Knight g6 hits the queen and the rook. He goes here, takes. Yeah, I think I win something. So let's improve a piece. And he instantly copies us. This threatens nothing. It opens up his bishop and maybe some f6 stuff. But my intention was g4, but now I also have f3. I think I want to throw in f3 first. I mean, if he goes back, that's very ideal. But if he counters us, which is more likely, then we could get two pieces. So he can, oh wait, he can get two pieces. So wait, we get a knight, he gets a knight. We get a bishop, he gets a bishop. There's got to be way more lines. So he retreats this way. Maybe that was his idea, countering our knight in some awkward fashion. I guess that's an idea. I don't want to take him and help him develop. If he wants to waste time taking me, that's fine. I think for the time being, I still want to just harass his bishop, gain space. He'll probably take, but we'll just bring the bishop out for a moment. No big deal. We could just take the bishop. He took a knight. We could take a bishop. He could get a pawn out of that. But then his knight's hanging. So if we take the bishop, he has to move the knight somewhere. And what do we do with our pawn? Huh. Okay, let's just take this knight. Because I don't know what to do with that pawn in that line. I'm going to lose it, but I don't want to take and open up the F-file, so it's weird. I also don't have like an attack that's fast enough. I mean, I just didn't want to do it. It's just, this is just an easy alternative. You take the knight. He's still stuck with the bishop. He has to move it back. You get the free pawn storm. So it's a lot simpler. He can throw in check and stop that, but you block here. I'm not sure how that is better for him. Maybe he throws this in. And we go back here. So we don't give him the easy trade. And I mean, yeah, we're kind of the ones dictating what's happening in the center. Okay, so he goes back. You could just take a bishop for a knight, but I kind of want to just do the free harassment. Now, if we go h4, he's going to take with check, right? So we move our king. And then the open h file is probably not worth it. So in that case, in order to play h4, let's drop the bishop back to support it. The bishop becomes more solid in this behind the pawn chain instead of in front of it. If he tries something, we can always continue pushing the f pawn. If he kicks our knight, we can always take the bishop. and it's a bishop, so. And then we'll put ours on that diagonal. And we have made a lot of pawn moves, but, you know, okay, so I was going to say he can't really get to our king. So he tries to move the knight, but after we move the bishop, I don't know where it's headed. Kind of weird. We could even go this way, but why would we? Let's go here. We want it on d3, but I don't want to give him the trade. So I want to attack his stuff first and see what happens. If I can induce some of these moves, and then I'll take. Because he doesn't really have anything to play for. There's no c5 pawn break, which is what you would want. So you kind of at some point just have to play f6. But when is he going to do that, and is he going to know to do that? So he tries to improve his bishop this way, which is interesting, because now if he plays f6, he can try to take with check if I go h4. Not a bad idea. h4, f6. He can take with check. So I'm going to go king f2, supporting the bishop so that on h4, f6, the bishop's not hanging. And I could take his bishop, or move my knight, or do whatever. But he takes my knight. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that. I kind of want to take with the pawn. Although it does block my bishop a little. Thing is, if I take with the bishop, then f6 really, hits a lot harder. There's no knight g6. It comes with tempo on my piece. And so he does play f6. We could pin that pawn, but is there a point? I'm going to go for the bishop harassment still. Okay, so he takes the pawn in the center. And I'm going to intermezzo the bishop, and then I'll take. That way it has to go to an awkward square, blocking some type of piece, whichever one it goes to. And then we'll be able to retake control of the center on the dark squares. And his knight cannot easily contest it because it's on a weird square. It's going to take a lot of time to try to reroute it. In the meantime, I kind of want to get my queen into the game somewhere. He moves his bishop here. A bit odd, unless he plans on sacking the pawn. So I'm thinking of, like I mentioned, improving my queen. It comes with threats. It's interesting. So let's do that because we only have 2 minutes. It threatens this. It blockades the pawn. The bishop covers this. And we could maybe put our rook on g1, our other rook, and try to push these pawns. That's a plan. And yeah, so we have a bind on the dark squares, and only the knight can fight for the dark squares in theory. Like, yes, it's far away from this particular square, but I mean, in theory, the knight can, like this, target a dark square, but the bishop can't. So I'm going to take that knight off the board. That way, I have much better dark square control than him, and his bishop can never do anything about that, right? It can never contest this battery we have, so it's just, and it's also a blockade. Super annoying for him. So he takes back, but now, pretty sure there's stuff hanging. Okay, so he He forces the queen trade, but what a chicken. And even then it doesn't work, but you can take the queen and take the rook, or take the rook and take the queen. Either way, you're up the exchange. We only have a minute on our clock. Let's go for this one. Either one is fine. You're going to get a bishop. I mean, you're going to give up a bishop and get a rook. So we take the queen. He goes here. Now we're just up stuff. Let's get this guy in the game with a threat. We can put this guy over here. And let's try not to lose on time. So he defends the pawn, and our idea is to infiltrate. He goes for the trade, and we take it. This allows us to shift our rook over with a threat, infiltrate. You can defend, but only for so long. Now we have a 2-on-1 pass pawn situation here. If the king goes over, he hangs this pawn. So we have different win conditions. We can decoy the bishop to take more stuff, or we can get our king in. King is a super strong piece in the endgame. He vacates this pawn, but now we have two connected passers, so that's very bad for him. And as long as you move your king on the dark squares, the light square bishop doesn't even exist. Threaten mate. Well, the bishop could have blocked, so it wouldn't have been a mate, but okay. Now we're setting up a ladder mate. His moves don't actually matter. Okay, the bishop's pinned. And this ought to do it since the bishop's pinned. Oops. I don't know why I thought they were on different levels. Oh my god. I could have sworn they were zigzagged, but I was wrong. So okay, it's made either way. Whether it takes 5 moves or 15 moves, checkmate ends the game. So let's review it quickly. We get a Jobava London on the board, and this was a very interesting one. He plays this weird move, which you kind of force it in a lot of lines, but he played it before anything ever happened. So it's so weird. So anyway, we just development and center. And here's just prophylaxis. He wants to Jobava London us, right? And it's not a threat because we can defend the pawn and stuff, but he can never use the square for the rest of the game from his bishop or his knight. And that just reduces a lot of the weird counterplay that black hopes to get in some of these lines. You don't have to do it, just a preference. You see it here in this game, but you don't see me play this in many of the other speedrun Jobava games. So he plays c5, and the computer says I should take this knight. What's the follow-up? Oh, it's just to take the pawn, right? Take this and take on c5. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could have done this. Maybe you should have done this, but I just didn't want to do it. I mean, you get the knight, but you have to give up this bishop, and I created a lot of light square holes with my pawn chain. He's got a bishop staring at my light. His rook gets an open b file, and my b pawn is, it's like a pseudo backwards pawn because I played a3. So that's just the reasons why I didn't do it, but it's clearly a better move. Here, you take the pawn. I mean, if he hunts it, I guess you protect it, and you play that structure. Otherwise, if you just do what I did, going for like your typical setup, they're saying you miss out on the free pawn and the nice position you would have had. It's true. They're not wrong. because this is just an even position. Like I would rather be white here. We have some cool ideas, but it's not just immediately much better. So take, take, take. Yeah, anything he tries, I guess you just go b4. Queen d4. Yeah, you're just up a pawn, I guess. I should have gone for that. They gave me a blunder for that too. I have all zeros, one blunder, 14 average center pawn, 96 accuracy, but they're saying I definitely should have taken this knight. My one mistake of the game. I didn't even really look at that. His knight was so bad that in my head I had already like given up on the I'm gonna take this for my bishop, and I never revisited the idea. Like I thought about it when he first made the move. I was like, is it ever worth taking? Do I ever want to double his pawns? Give him the, I was considering it, and then after I decided no, I never visited it again. Um, Even here, they're saying it's a positional, like a good positional move at the beginning of the game, which is interesting. I still don't want to give it up though. Here I do because I win a pawn, but like I said, I didn't even consider this move again. Okay, so we make a mistake. We still have an even game. We just missed an opportunity to win a pawn. Okay, let's turn this off. He takes, force move, and white's just slightly better. Center and development, it's a totally even game, which is what I expected at this point. I think even game, but I'd rather be white. Development and center. Improving a piece, kind of for free. I mean, it's not threatening anything right now, but he can't really challenge this because you can't put a knight here. And we are threatening g4 next, so it is improving a piece. It also gets it out of any bishop g4 ideas, making his bishop more useless when we pawn storm it. And now just improving for free. This also helps with the g4 pawn storm. And now we improve our position for free, gain space. He takes our knight. We just recapture, forced move, whichever way you take his piece. And now we improve a piece with a threat of h4. And it's an improvement because it's in front of our f-pawn, which we might want to use to run up the board. And it's also an easier target in front of the pawn than behind it. He hits our bishop, so force move. And now you obviously don't have to play king f2, but my ideas were king safety and improving the position with a threat. The threat again, h4. h4 was not possible if he plays f6. Like, because if I take the bishop, hitting the rook, he intermezzos with a check. So to get rid of that line, king f2 defending the bishop, now you can just recapture. He takes, so force move. He goes f6, but they say it's a lot worse than f5, which is weird. I'm not going to get into that. That's a little too much. So we just go h4, trying to harass the bishop with space for free. And it says white's plus 1.4. It's nothing so concrete. I'm not about to grab material, but it's just a nice position. He takes a pawn. We intermezzo the bishop, plus 2. And then we take our material back with a plus 2 position. So it's a nice bind. And at this point, I felt like we had a nice bind on the center. Even though we don't have the pawn presence that we usually have. Oftentimes in the Jobava, black has more central pawns than you. or but if you can blockade those pawns and fix them, you know, like the way we're controlling these squares, then even without the pawns, you still have control over the center. So we just improve a piece towards the center for free. He's hitting our queen, so force move. Free stuff, +4. And then he just, you know, blunders more material. The exchange, so free stuff. And now we just want to develop to the open files as fast as possible. I hit the pawn, but you could have gone to the open file first. We do it in either order, trying to get maximum activity. We trade a pair of rooks because it's +7 and he has no counterplay. A rook is much stronger than a bishop in a deep endgame. For example, once it hits the 7th, the position totally collapses. The bishop does not have such possibilities. And in addition, once you trap the opponent's king, that's a huge asset in the endgame. Again, bishop cannot just cut off the board like this. And this is our win condition, 2 pawns, but you can win however you like. So I just ignore him, make a couple of random king moves, although you don't even need the king, I guess. You could just push the pawns, but... So we just do a bunch of random stuff and checkmate the guy. Hopefully you can see some of the ideas and cool ways to play the Jobava London. Harassing the bishop, attacking the king, pushing these pawns. It looks funny, but it's a little bit fun. Give it a try in your games. Good luck in your chess. Goodbye.